And just like that, it's Wednesday. Greetings, salutations. It is I, Russ Kane. What's left of him. This is The Daily Show. This is Men's Radio Station. We are 100% live. We are 100% uncensored. We just tell it like it is. Groupon, eat out for under £25. Sort of. Not interested. How are we today? If you're fasting, why are you watching this? But if you are fasting, I wish you well over the fast. And what have we got here? Splendid. Crazy name. Crazy gal. Eve Phantom. Scared the crap out of myself then for a minute. Lovely. Now then, people watching as per usual all over the world. So greetings to everybody watching in the United States of America, down in Kentucky, sometimes in California if they can't sleep because it's the middle of the night there. And from wherever Eve Phantom lives, presumably hanging upside down in the belfry somewhere, to David Wimble. Morning, young Russ. Oh, bless you. I love you. David Wimble, morning out from the port of Calais. You coming over in a rubber boat, or are you actually doing it properly? By the way, I was thinking about you. I want to come back to you in a minute, David, lovely Wimble. And my cousin Francine Warner. Francine Warner, hello there. I'll be seeing you soon, I gather. And Robert Van Buren. Hello, Russ and Neil. Speaking of Neil, is he there? He's kind of there, but I think he's, I don't know, is he doing
I am literally, I've been preparing something for the show, and I'm literally putting the finishing touches to it now. This is how Rip and Read and live we are.
No, you go away and finish doing what you're doing. Finish what you're doing, and then give me a wave. This is how it works. Luke Newman. All right, what we got going, Luke? Good afternoon, Russ and Neil. My legs are still hurting. Oh, dear. 7 of the Fermenter Talk attendees did the virtual marathon. What is the virtual London Marathon? What is that? Virtual. You virtually think you're running with 60,000. I don't know how that works. On Sunday, all improving the mental health over the last 12 weeks of training. We raised nearly £2,000 too. Brilliant. Well done, Mr. Luke Newman. Fermenter Talk. Fantastico. That is good stuff. Have we said hello to everybody? Now, I want to come back to David Wimble while Neil is preparing his O-levels. And, new cigar ashtray available from Cigar Shop Litton. No, can't do that. What happens is the email notifications comes in the box. Go figure. It's how life is. You're in Calais, Wimble, right? David and I have got some very exciting stuff that we're working on, which I can't talk about at the moment, but it's really something that we've been working on for a couple of years. But COVID kind of got in the way. Now, Wimble lives on the Kent coast and is very open. When I went down there, recorded some shows with him. Hadn't been there, saw the studio and all along the coast. And he tells me, and he used to be, had a very special job, apart from radio, that he worked on the lifeboats. So not only on the Thames, where he would drag bodies out. I'm not talking about just sitting there having a lovely time. He was at the deep end, right? He lives on the Kent coast. He sees what is coming in terms of refugees. Well, we're using the term refugees. Economic migrants is probably the phrase, or illegal immigrants is another phrase. Use whatever you want. They're coming over in rubber boats anyway. That's the deal. And let me be clear. If you are fleeing from persecution, if you are fleeing because they're going to take you out and shoot your family in the head, or shoot you in the head, or put you into the fanatical, barbaric death cult, I get it. And you're welcome. And no one should have to endure that. Absolutely. But if you just think, I can see you, I'll just finish, Longy. But if you think that you can just breeze in because you got your hand out, sod off. I don't know why we're pussyfooting around this. This is just nonsense. The numbers are incredible. I can't. I'd like to live in America. I'd like to be in Texas with my family. I can't breeze in and just say, you know what, I kind of quite fancy being in America, so I'll just take all your social services and I'll just do everything. And no, I can't breeze into America. I can't go to Malta, where I quite fancy being. Nice weather, nice food, nice and quiet. That's what I fancy. Can't do it, right? So why is it you can get in a rubber boat and just turn up? If you are fleeing from death and persecution, absolutely, and it should go through the proper channels. if you are just turning up from Albania because you fancy it, I don't think so. And why I'm mentioning this, and I saw David Wimble here, is this: that the usual suspects, the usual Hollywood gobshites, all come out and say, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. Shut up. You live in a huge, 50,000-foot mansion. You fly around in private jets. Shut up. You don't live on the Kent coast. You don't even live in the UK, half of you. Shut up. Mind your own damn business. There we are. That's my rant over for today.
I love the way you articulated that, because it's a sensitive subject, and I've been in conversations with people about this sort of thing before, and sometimes people, if they're not really listening, they go, "Oh,
they just go, you're a Nazi, you're a fascist,
or a fascist,
you're a racist." It's got nothing to do with that.
And it's not about racism. Or any ism at all. I completely agree with you. We're a compassionate country. Of course, people like that need our help. But there again, if you're just coming over and not going to contribute anything at all,
it's not just that. If you go to America, right? Here's the deal. Oh, this is from Julie Voice. This is great. Hello, Russ and Neil. Greetings from sunny Houston. She's English, by the way. Well, it will be sunny once it gets light. Isn't that cool? I love it that she's Houston, Texas. And Asa says this: I'd welcome you here, which is the northeastern states, or to Canada. Bless you.
I love Canada.
I'd come and work with you in a heartbeat. Wouldn't even hesitate.
I love Canada.
Wouldn't even hesitate. I'd be over, pack up and go. The thing is this: if you go to America, you gotta assimilate into the American culture, like it or not. You're coming into another country. You can't bring your... What I don't understand...
You can't bring your shit to another person's country.
Thank you very much. I was going to put it more politely.
Sorry.
I was going to put it slightly more politely, but I like it. Don't drag all your shit and don't think... I mean, I can't turn up. And I've thought about this a lot, but it's just this analogy has popped into my head. When I go and live in America, let's say, and I decide, well, I want British rules, so I'm going to drive on the left.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I can't drive on the left. The rule is I drive on the right in America. But no, I'm British. So why is it you think you can come along and bring in your own set of laws? No, you're very welcome, but they're UK laws. That's how it is. We're all stuck under them. There's no exceptions. That's the deal. If I go to France, I've got to obey their rules. That's how it is. It's not racist. It's not xenophobic.
Not racist at all.
The law. It's the law. Am I missing something? Did Brad Pitt or Barbara opine on the rubber boats? Yeah, of course they did. It was I've forgotten her name. Meryl Streep, Harry Potter, the Harry Potter bloke whose name I can't remember. I don't really care. Whatever. Daniel Radcliffe. I mean, he's a pretty good actor. He's a good actor. Meryl Streep, great actor. I admire them as actors. I don't need you preaching to me. Shut the hell up. And also, and before we get on to Neil's thing, because Neil's been working very, very hard. What have we got here? I'm just trying to get through the comments. Hello, all. Russie, you sound croaky, kiddo. I love Camden. No, I'm not croaky. My throat's not been absolutely brilliant. But there we are. Now, let me go back to Wimble, because he lives on the coast. He sees this. He's not living in Hollywood on a private jet. Do you want to read this out, Neil? Because people might
put things into perspective. They've also had around 60,000 this year too, but they're meant to register in the first safe country.
Yeah, well, we know where that is. We know that. We know that's here. Yes. So the answer to your question is Brad Pitt. I've commented on my Facebook page today. The media are covering that Brad Pitt and the Angelina Jolie, right, are in a huge legal dispute. Not over the kids this time. No, they're in a huge legal dispute over a winery that they have. They were joint owners of a winery, and of course now they're fighting for custody of the winery, because in Hollywood, gang, it's only ever about the money. It's not about anything else. It's about the money. Always has been. Always will be. The world's cesspit of hypocrisy. And so in order to fight what is a completely commercial case over who owns what in a winery, they're dragging everything in about spousal abuse and abuse of the children. I don't mean sexual abuse, I mean physical abuse. So Angelina Jolie has filed all these papers about a fight that took place on their private jet. But hey, please do lecture us about saving the planet. Please do. I want to hear everything that you have to say from your private jet. Maybe you can get one of your PAs to send a message. And they're bringing up all the filthy, dirty laundry over a fight over a winery. That's everything you need to know about Hollywood. Over to you, Neil Long, the king of New Malden.
I don't want to sound insensitive in saying what I said earlier, because I do feel, I mean, the fact that, like you said, people have got these terrible persecutions to escape from shocks me in 2022, that this kind of persecution can and does still exist. And, you know, as someone who's British, I would be proud to be in a country which would open its land and hearts to people like that. And I really do mean that. But let's put it this way. If I went to America, like you said, and I decided I was to walk around naked and I got into trouble under American law, which I probably would. Oh, you just don't like me because I've got grey hair, pulling the grey hair card, for example. And that's just rubbish. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what I'm trying to say.
It's true. Rosemary Jessup, Queen of the Horses. Rosemary, I must talk to you one day. So I have no idea where you live, and either looks great or terrifying. It's one of the two. But her pictures are fantastic. The sunrises and sunsets are absolutely stunning. It's in the UK, but no idea where. They've been divorced 6 years. Why not bring it up then? But why make it public at all? Because they're papers that are filed in court. And if they get filed in court, unless it's sub judice, they can fall into the public domain. And also, remember, these people, exactly like Amber Heard, etc., have huge teams. Oh, you must be joking me. Hang on. All right, you carry on. I gotta take this. Just give me a second here.
For sure. We'll come back to Russ and let him finish what he was saying, giving his example in just a moment.
Hello.
We do. Oh,
hello.
We can still hear you, Russ. We can still hear you, man. I was going to talk some more if there's time on the show today, which is the conversation we started last time, because I think it's really, really important about depression. And I have been preparing some rather better graphics than I had the other day, much better. And I'm going to make a strong case for something. So if I have time to do that, I would love to do that, Russ.
You carry. I'm sorry. That was somebody who I need to talk, who wants to help a men's radio station, a very, very senior person. On
you need to go take it. I can.
No. I'm not going to take it. It's a very long conversation. I said, please phone me at 11. So 12:13. What have we got here? Ramsey Wyman. Blair is a woman. Yeah. Well, Tony B. Liar is a war criminal. I wouldn't have rested until he was up in The Hague. But there we are. That's just me.
Did you know that Tony Blair MP is an anagram of I'm Tory Plan B?
Oh my God, that's very good.
It is. Did you know that the House of Parliament is a perfect anagram for loonies far up the Thames? It's true.
Shut up.
I'm not joking. It is. Loonies far up the Thames is a perfect anagram of the House of Parliament. I kid you not.
Let me just deal with this. It's a big point from Ramsey. Then we've got to move on to what you're saying. Many of those on the rug boats come from war-ridden, oppressive countries. Yep. Where the West has supported those regimes. No argument from me at all, Ramsey. You're right. Years ago, when Blair took us into an illegal war, and why is it the guy who sexed up the dossier is all over the media and lauded like he's some expert? I won't ask him for the time of day, literally. And if he told me the time, I'd go and double check it somewhere else. I said to many people, this will lead to more terrorism, correct, and more displacement of people, correct. Most people want to live in peace in their own land amongst their own people. Yeah. Of course they damn well do. Absolutely right. That's exactly what they want to do. They just want to get on and lead their lives like you do, like I do, and everybody watching and listening around the world.
I'd like to live in my own land, at peace with my own people. Absolutely. It doesn't mean I hate other people. It doesn't mean I'm not open to other people. Quite the opposite, actually. It makes the relationship healthier. We can keep our own identity and respect other people's. I
live in a very ethnically diverse area. I have done for the last sort of 8 years or so, and I absolutely bloody love it. I love it. Everybody walks past me, is talking another language, and it's quite. It's
I live in a cul-de-sac road, and it's a melting pot of diversity here. I've got Bangladeshi one side, I've got Hungarian the other side. It's an absolute melting pot.
So you're not short of Balti or goulash. to be honest.
We do a food festival once a year. It's all very middle class, but
Yeah,
some of the dishes you get, but for reasons slightly less shallow than food. I like it. I like the diversity.
It's
And by
not
the way,
shallow
we all get on
liking
great.
food. It's not shallow liking food. It's one of the few great things left in life.
Yeah, we all get on great. It's a good little community. You know, there's a trust between the neighbours. You know, close neighbours. We have each other's door keys and all that sort of stuff. That actually does still exist.
What you're saying is you're a burglar.
No, I'm not saying I'm a burglar. I'm saying I have.
Okay.
I have.
I'm sorry. I thought you said you pass around skeleton keys.
No, I said the neighbours trust each other, and we share each other's door key in case we need to do something to help them out.
Wow. Although my next door neighbour, I've been where I am for 5 years, and my next door neighbour, in 5 years, I saw twice.
I know.
Twice.
That's the thing, though, because the nature of where I live,
and we spoke once.
I know, and that's a modern day thing.
That's London for you.
And actually, that can contribute to that as well. And that's
you crack on, because I want to hear what you've got to say.
It's a good way to lead into it. Actually, that is kind of a modern day thing. You know, that a lot of people here are professional people, and they come and they go, and we're friendly and cordial to each other, and we rub along perfectly well. Yes, I agree with you, Ramsey. Diversity is truly the spice of life. Totally with you on that one, bro. But we do need a sense of community, but I'll come on to that in a bit. So at the end of the last episode, shall I read this first?
Carry on. Just a quick last one from Tim Payne, then we must move on to Neil. He's worked so damn
People want to come here because they find our way of life and freedom attractive, but try and change it and sometimes bring their problems with them. Why? Yeah. That's a whole other episode, isn't it?
And why are the police so gutless? I'll just say one name, Rotherham. Move on.
Yeah, there is that as well, and that is very understandable why any right-minded person would say that. Anyway, I was talking about depression in the last episode, and we kind of finished with me talking about, and you were rightly quite cynical, I think, about 3 power poses that could change how we felt. And it's all about 2 things when it comes to it, because depression is a mindset. It's not a very nice mindset, but happiness is a mindset. Love is a mindset. Anger is a mindset. They're algorithms of the mind, okay? And it can't be the only truth.
Whoa. Do you think it's happiness is a mind? Run through the mindsets again.
Anything. It comes down to state. It comes down to the state we're in, okay? Happiness is a mindset or a state of being. It's a particular set of thoughts and feelings which happy people practice, and that's why they're happy. And it's the same. And when you break it down into its components, it becomes more easy to understand. To say it's an illness, while that is somewhat accurate, and sometimes it's very accurate, kind of takes away from the fact that it can be broken down and tinkered with a little bit. You're not a victim of it, or we've been taught to think we're victims of it. I'm going to make a case for something, okay? Feel free to disagree with me, okay? This is my first slide. Number 1, why should you listen to me?
This is why I love Neil Long. Look at the blooming trouble he's got. He's just a great guy. Go on, Neil.
What? Anyway, why should you listen to me? Number 1, science. I've studied and followed some of the science of this, where we can now measure brain scans. We can actually, like our wonderful guest the other day, people like Dr. Cave, do you remember that? Where they can see the illness, neuroimaging, and all that sort of thing. So science has super advanced. Even something like mindfulness is now common parlance, where before it would be something you probably have to go and live in a monastery in Tibet. Now, Oxford Uni are studying it, or they already have, and Ruby Wax is writing books about it. And remember, if this seems new to you...
Do not start me. You're going, please, do not drag Ruby Wax into this conversation.
Should I not mention her name again?
I don't want to divert you from what you're saying, but I lost my temper at her show. I really, really was furious. I'd never heard such bollocks. It was absolute shite. I'm sorry
I haven't
to
seen
say
this,
that.
so I can't comment.
It was garbage, and it was self-indulgent, and it's not a subject which you can dick around with. We don't do it here on Men's Radio Station. We take it seriously. We don't drag in. I got to be really careful what I say because they'll sue me, but I was furious. Anyway, go on. I'll tell you why I was furious. Do you want to know why I was furious?
Go on. Do
you want to know why? It was at the Museum of Comedy, which is a place that I love.
Okay.
And we went along and we paid money to see the show. And it wasn't a show at all. it wasn't even just like a warm-up. She was reading from A4 notes and making notes as we go along. Now, if you want to get me or Neil or any of you along, you pay us. You pay us for advice. We don't pay you. So you try certain things out and are making notes. I mean, it was a shambles.
Right.
I understand people do tryouts. I saw Ricky Gervais. It was magnificent. Magnificent. And he had little cards. But he didn't. It was a show. Does that make any sense?
It does, because you want to get your money's worth. I mean, I understand.
No, it's not even about that. It's like
I see that all the time in comedy clubs.
It's ludicrous. I like tryouts. You go to Edinburgh Fringe, you see tryouts all the time. What she did was just hopeless. But she had with her a sort of psychiatrist and a monk.
Oh, yes.
Some young guy who'd been a monk, right? And then when it got to the bit, he said, I spent 5 years trying to understand. And he came up with some absolute nonsense. I said, Jim, and I turned around and I said, yeah, you can spend 5 years contemplating your navel, doing absolutely sod all for society, while everybody else is worrying how they can put bread on the table, a roof over their head, clothe their children, pay their mortgage, pay their rent, be able to go to Tesco's and not have to scrap around in the end gondolas for something that's, a bargain. Yeah. You self-indulgent twat. It's all about you. You put nothing back into society. I'm not interested in anything you have to say.
Mm.
And I was livid. I had to go and have a couple of drinks. That's how angry I was. I was passionate about it, because what you have to say is important. What some self-indulgent, I spent just 5 years on this, and it'd been in a monastery, like you've got nothing to say about the real world. You're not part of the real world. Everybody would love to have time and just contemplate their navel. We're all trying to make a living and stay alive. Rant over.
So, what first seemed radical then becomes the commonplace. So if these ideas that I'm about to put forward, number one, don't necessarily believe me, do your own research, do your due diligence. I would rather it that way, rather than taking gospel every single word I say. I've got no ego investment in this at all. Reason number one why it might be worth listening to me. Reason number two, I have followed the science to some degree, and what would seem radical now has become commonplace, like we can see illnesses in the brain. 25 years ago, if I'd have said that I will have more information in the palm of my hand than the American president had in the 80s, I would have been scoffed or laughed at. Now it's commonplace and we don't even think about it. All right. So what I'm saying is radical ideas begin that way because they're different. Okay, but just because they're different, don't reject it. See if there's something for you in here. And with all teachings like this, the best books I've read, the best teachers I've studied with, they always say something along the lines of take the best and leave the rest. If it doesn't resonate with you, I'm not trying to force it on anyone. If it helps you, I am delighted. This is a summary of things that have helped me. Okay. So science is number one. Number two is I've been there. I recognize the language of depression. I recognize it when I see it in people. I know the language it speaks. I know the words it uses. I can see it in their faces. Hello, darkness, my old friend. Are you bullshitting once again? Because it is a bullshitter. We'll come on to that, right? However, I can recognize it. I can see it. I know what it looks like. It's got a look. It's got a feel. It's got a vocabulary. Okay. I know it well. I've been there. And number two, remember, ultimately, it does. That's why, hopefully, that's my disclaimer. First of all, that's hopefully why you should listen to me. But it does come down to state and focus. Okay, and if it were true, consider this as a possibility that there were things. Maybe the information wasn't available before. Maybe you didn't have access to it. Maybe it hadn't been studied and invented. What was true in the past isn't necessarily true now. With our understandings increasing in psychology and in science, as we all know that's happening. Maybe there is a new thing waiting to unfold. Maybe there are new things that would help you. Maybe they're not that new. Maybe they're just new to you. Maybe you haven't come across them before. It doesn't mean they don't exist necessarily. So all I'm saying is be open to it. Be open to it. Take the best and leave the rest. If you think I'm talking BS, that's fine. I don't mind. Depression will say to you, by the way, don't listen to Neil Long. This will never work. He's full of shit. How would he know? And all that. That's part of the language of depression. It's like a little troll. Now, just going to play with some ideas here. Okay, that loomed really big. But if I put that up, that says depression there. And if the rest of this is the rest of your life, you see, the thing is, depression.
What have you got? Is depression in the circle?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Right. Got it.
And you can't see it. And that's
so
kind
if you're
of
listening on Deluxe Radio, what Neil is doing is holding up these large pieces of printed paper. The first one is pink with the word depression covering it. It's a very big piece of paper that covers the screen. Now what he's holding up is huge, right? With depression in scary black writing. Now what he's holding up is a pink, huge printed piece of paper. The word depression is contained in a very small circle, and the rest of the thing is blank.
Thank you. I forgot for a moment we were on Deluxe Radio. Thank you for the description.
I'm so sorry. I would not normally interrupt at all, but Leslie Demeser, who is like one of my best friends in the world, has fallen over again. Oh, dear God. Good afternoon. A bit late to the party today. Feel a bit sorry for myself. Just tripped over and as a result grazed my knee and hurty hand. I'm sorry. Mind you, I was helped to my feet by a lovely man and woman on the way to synagogue. I explained to them I'd been struck by the wrath of God because on this holy of holy days I went out for a pedicure, not stop me going to the theatre tonight. Lely, we wish you well because she's fallen over and broken her. Anyways, it's horrible. Wish you well. Continue, please.
But even looking at the big sign with depression on it in the scary Halloween writing, but does that have a slightly different feel to it? If the red, which is the majority of the blank bit, was all of your life, and that was only a smaller part of it there, it wouldn't seem as daunting.
It would seem kind of, I'd use the word, I think it seems maybe manageable.
Yeah.
Maybe containable.
Containable.
Yeah.
What would you rather deal with, that or this?
I would much rather deal with door number 2, please.
Right, exactly. Now that is known, if you like, as a reframe, and that point of view is just as available as this point of view. The problem is the louder point of view, the voice of depression screams very, very loud, and it will feed you every nasty lie in the world about yourself. It's like a little troll or a big troll that will tell you that you're worthy, the world would be better off without, unworthy, sorry, the world would be better off without you. You're a piece of scum on the end of someone's shoe. You're a crap this, you're a crap that, you're a rubbish that, and really, why would anyone, and actually, why would you deserve help? There's people out there experiencing much worse things than you. Look at those poor people fearing oppression, and you're just feeling sad for no reason when you've got everything. That is the voice of depression, and they are lies. That's the thing. Melanie says, "Can I ask why it's red?" It's a danger color. No particular reason for red. It's just for contrast. But now look at this. Let's say you got lots of things in life, because depression isn't the only game in town.
Could you read those out? Because I'm sorry.
I intend to.
I can't read
I'm now holding up a red, no significance on the red, with a red page with pink circles in it, and in each circle is a bit of yellow writing. And each of those represents an area of life: family, freedom, awe, passion, career, imagination, creativity, adventure, spirituality, relationships, sex. Oh, and depression's there as well. But when it's kind of busied out, there's so much else going on, it kind of goes into the background. It's still there, but it's not as noticeable as our first card, where it's all you could see. This point of view is now available as well. And I would make the case, if other areas of your life are going really well, remember, it's about focus and about state. And I'll come on to more of that in just a minute. This is about to take another 5 minutes from here, by the way.
I am loving this, Neil.
So the question is, how would you, if it is all about focus or state, Neil, why on earth wouldn't you choose to, how do we change our focus and our state? And I'll come on to that in just a moment. Remember where depression is on there, by the way. I know you can't do this on Deluxe Radio, but remember where it is on the card. All right.
Okay.
But then if you highlight another area of your life, it is sometimes distraction can be a really good thing, because there's the same categories. Ooh,
hello.
I'm now holding up.
Speaking of Leslie, it's weird that you put that up and Leslie Demeser's suddenly appeared. Weird.
Oh, there you go.
Who'd have
she
thought?
Must have known. Now she's forgotten about her sore hand.
By the way, this is coming in. I want to clap you on the back, because this is coming in from Northeast USA. Excellent presentation, Neil.
From you, right. Don Brown, that is high praise. Thank you, sir.
Oh, that is great.
I appreciate
that. Who's
for the benefit of those on Deluxe Radio, I'm now holding up a piece of paper, red background, nothing significant about the red. All the areas of life that I just listed in there, except one is in a different colour to the rest. This one, I'm just doing it for a laugh, really. It says hot sex. Notice all the attention's on there. Notice depression is still there, but you weren't even thinking about that when I held that up, were you?
Me? No, I was in Stanmore.
That's how to.
In-joke.
That is one way of shifting focus, because you must admit, when I put that card up and suddenly went from talking about depression to hot sex, suddenly that got your attention, and for a moment, if only for a moment, your focus shifted.
Always.
So it can shift.
By the way, that'll always get my attention. Doesn't matter what I'm doing.
Okay. And also, if you give your attention to something, it tends to be a psychological law that what you put your attention on increases, what you focus on grows. Most of us have heard of that. So if you're focusing on things like passion, it grows and grows and grows. Now I'm holding up a paper with a big black circle on it with the word passion, and it's overlapping the other things.
And it also says career, fun, and yeah, it's good. Yeah. We must get on to our guest, because I've had to keep changing this all the time.
2 minutes.
This is so good. And if we have
I finish
time,
2 minutes?
If Dr. Soham Das can wait 2 minutes, could you nod? I can see you. Can you? Yeah, I'm getting a thumbs up. Please continue.
All right, brilliant. 2 minutes, and I will finish up for today, because I won't mind doing more on this. But anyway, so final slide. I'm now holding. I'm not going to describe this, because I'm sorry if you can't see this, but this is a visual thing. Remember where depression was on the slide before? Okay.
Yeah.
Can you see it there? Do you remember where it was?
I can't see it, actually.
That's because it's not there.
It's not there.
Everyone's now looking for something that isn't there.
Oh, that's very clever. Oh,
we've done several shifts of focus there.
Damn you. That's
focus can shift. I've just proved it. Okay. Now, that's focus. I'll finish up with this. 1 minute. State is how we feel at any given moment. So if it does just come down to changing our state, why aren't we? Number one, you might not believe it. Number two, depression would lie to you that it's not possible. Three, other ignorant people might say that's not possible. Pharmaceutical companies might want to sell you drugs, blah, 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 blah. But this is proven science, okay? And I'm just going to read this from a book. This has been measured in a study at Harvard. Researchers studied the compelling influence of posture. Remember those power moves that we did before? Hands on hips, Wonder Woman, it's a superstar DJ, and hands behind your head.
Didn't like the last one. Didn't like the last one.
I know you didn't, because you thought it meant something, and it meant something else to you.
Yeah.
But the way I meant it wasn't the way you thought it was meant. But anyway, okay. They did these power poses, those 3 power poses. That's number 2. And they split the people into 2. It was a split test, as they do in science. Listen to this. This is about changing state. The group using the high power poses reported feeling stronger. They performed better in mock interviews than the other group. They were more likely to take risks than the other group. Now, remember the science, we can measure brain chemistry. Their brain chemistry changed. Their cortisol, the stress level, decreased by 25%. This is after 2 minutes. Testosterone regulates fat, muscle, red blood production, and yes, sex drive, and fertility improved by 19%.
Not fertility, I don't need that.
Right. The low power poses increase the cortisol and decrease the testosterone. That's how quickly things can change in 2 minutes alone. If you would like to learn more about this stuff, about changing focus, about changing state, I will be glad to teach you more. And
Russ, let's do more. Let's do more next week. This is absolutely great.
Did you like that?
Like it? I blooming loved it, and so did everybody. The figures are going through the roof, and everybody loved it. Right.
I'll just hold up the favourite slide once more.
Yeah, that's the one. That'll make your bruises and bumps feel better, Leslie. Right. Let's, ladies and gentlemen, we're waiting ages. We've had to sort of rearrange this. I'm so glad he's here, Dr. Soham Das.
Hello, Russ. How you doing, my man?
Thank you for waiting while I was waxing lyrical with my crazy ass presentation.
That's quite all right. You seem certainly very passionate about it.
I am, only because I've experienced it myself. So anything mental health related, I am all over it. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. I'm glad we could finally sort it out. That's marvelous stuff. Tell us all about yourself and basically why you're here. Why are you here?
Okay, sure. So my name's Dr. Shaham Das, and I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. So what that basically means is that I assess and rehabilitate people who have committed quite serious offences, usually in the form of violence or sexual offences, who have or are suspected of having some sort of mental illness. So I assess people in courts and in prisons and in psychiatric units. And I also work as an expert witness. So I give evidence in criminal trials. And I'm separate to that. I'm trying to break into the media. So I'm trying to impart my knowledge.
You've got everything going for you. You're disgustingly handsome, and you've got a charming and wonderful and mellifluous voice.
And you want to give
so
all
I
that
straight away, I hate, and you're intelligent. Hang on, and you're
This is
intelligent,
what
so
it
I
does
hate
to
you. I hate
just
you straight off.
All I need is the rest of the world to see that, and I'll be good.
Don't do it.
No, I'm going to
What
give
kind
you.
of media
I'm going to
do you
give
want
you
to get into?
advice.
Why do you want
Doc.
to get into media? Doctor?
Yeah, why do you want to? Do, Neil and I've been in it for years. Why do you want to do it?
Honestly, spreading a message or what?
I'll tell you why we're asking, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Neil because I've known Neil many, many years and we worked together like forever, right?
Yeah.
And I'm so thrilled he's come to join men's radio stations. It means so much to me personally. We look at you and we think, God, why can't we be a grown up like this guy? We'd want a proper job. No, I'm serious, because we just think what we do is pretty much nonsense. But you know,
I take it very seriously.
No, I know we take it. Yeah, I know we do, but you know, it's like radio, and like what you do is proper grown-up stuff.
Okay, well, my answer to that would be what I do for a living, what I do at work is very grown up, but my life outside of that, my natural kind of personality, my interests are quite immature, so I'm much more likely to watch.
We like you.
We're going to get on great. Please,
Marvel.
I'm already thinking you're my new best pal.
I watch Marvel films and stand up instead of studying psychiatric journals as I should be doing.
All right. So my first penetrating psychiatric question: the last Doctor Strange film, cack or good?
I thought it was a bit rubbish, to be honest with you.
Thank you very much. I knew we liked you straight away.
And I'll tell you why. I think that it just tried too hard to be quirky. It was like, it wasn't like all the scenes and all the sort of randomness jumping between worlds didn't seem like it followed a structure. It felt like the producers or the writers were just saying, what's the zaniest thing we can think of next? Let's do that without any kind of...
It just didn't work. If you're going to deal with the multiverse, it's such a complicated thing. Sorry, that's not what you called. Right.
And sorry, I just want to add this. The other thing is that the first Doctor Strange film, in my view, worked really well because of his personality, his quirks, his comments, his sarcasm, just him as a person. Whereas there was almost none of that in the second one. So
he was just a superhero, and he was kind of anonymous, really. Right. Okay.
I'm just talking about Marvel and things like it. I remember the early Batman and Robin, and it was zap, pow, bam, oof. You remember the big things on the visuals on the screen. And over the years, the comic book films have got darker and darker and darker. It is literally like reading a very dark psychiatric journal because they go much more into the film, like Joker, for example. Yeah. They will portray things like mental illness, neurosis, and worthy idea? Yes or no? What do you think? Given what you do?
So I think that it's all about money, isn't it? So they try to expand the audience by making it a bit more interesting, darker, having a backstory so that more adults as well as children will watch it. So they've still got powers and they still fight, but they want to get the adults in as well. I think that Joker is an exceptional film. I think it's really interesting to see how somebody who you can kind of sympathize with at the beginning changes due to kind of external factors and becomes this sort of maniacal villain at the end. But I would argue, slightly controversially, that I don't think that Joker, the character in that film, really had issues with his mental health as much as he had social issues and so neurological issues. So his laughing, that pseudobulbar palsy, as we call it, his laughing uncontrollably is technically a neurological, not a psychiatric issue, but I'll let that pass. But it's more about what happened to him, I think.
Here's the thing. I mean, you're not here to talk about movies, but we could talk about it forever. But here's the thing. When you go and see something like Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, etc., can you just be, relaxing with your mates? Are you kind of, you can't switch off and analyze what's going on?
I think for Joker specifically, I definitely was, my analysis was hyper alert because there's so much to do with forensic psychiatric and psychiatric wards. Yeah. Generally speaking, I don't think that for most films. But the thing that sort of annoyed me a little bit about Joker was that, as always, the depiction of mental health services was horrific. So, he got abused by doctors. Well, he didn't see him get abused by doctors, but he had a horrific time in a psychiatric ward. He was ignored by a social worker. I think they cut his medication at some point because of funding. So it's always the case in Hollywood films that, the psychiatrists are the bad guys and the mental health services just mess everything up.
It's interesting how they do that, but they always do. They always speak.
I remember going on a tour of the very quickly of the penitentiary, the Pen in Canada, and it was some real guards that had worked there. The Pen is now shut, but they do tours around it. Only shut relatively recently, something like 2013. But anyway, and they said we don't like the films like Shawshank Redemption, which I sort of worship the ground that film walks, and I think it's amazing. But because all the guards are portrayed as sadistic, narcissistic, power-hungry maniacs, when the real guards are actually just pretty ordinary, nice blokes trying to earn a living in a tough environment. And that was their point, and I accepted that. But I don't want to detract from what you're on, so I'm going to be quiet.
Well, I suppose, I completely agree with that. I think that if you've got a kind of hero story, if you've got an underdog you're rooting for, then it's really easy to have faceless corporations as being the bad people, isn't it? So prisons, psychiatric wards. Prisons I can kind of get to a degree because there is, lots of violence and bullying and drugs and stuff in prisons. These things do happen in the psychiatric kind of secure wards I work in. Yeah. But there's also a lot of compassion, and I very rarely see that in sort of TV or movie adaptations.
Yeah. And perhaps that side needs to be portrayed a little bit more, perhaps.
When you
over to you, Russ. I'm going to be quiet.
I've got a question for you because
sure.
I'm putting you on the couch for a second. When you are spinning through the channels and you see they always wheel out experts, and I put those in inverted commas, are you sitting at home going, like every actor, I could do that job? Or do you sit at home thinking, well, I couldn't have done that. That's a very clever point. Or do you think they're talking absolute trash? Why are they employing this person?
Absolutely, absolutely the first one. So part of you asked me before why I'm trying to break into the media. Part of it, 10% of it is my narcissism. I'm not going to lie, but mostly it's because I see other people doing.
Burning ambition's a much better term.
Okay, that's what I meant. Let's edit that bit out. But I do see people that I don't think experts do it badly necessarily. I think that would be unfair. Most are actually what they say makes sense, but it doesn't seem that difficult. Like the things they talk about are pretty basic not because I'm hyper intelligent, but because what the public want to know is short snapshots of the kind of basic overview. Actually, nobody really wants the detail.
Let me just disagree for a second. I'll tell you why. What happens is, with television, the most interview time you will be given on something like Phil and Holly or any of those god-awful shows is that...
I was actually speaking to Phil and Holly yesterday. So.
No. You're brave. Anyway, was there a cue?
Sorry.
Was there a cue there? You're right. I won't let it go, by the way. I just won't let it go. So here's the thing. If you go onto those shows, you will be given 7 minutes. And what they'll do is they'll take a ridiculously complicated, deep, serious subject. You've got 7 minutes. It's like, hey, could you explain the universe in 7? Well, yes, of course I can. Hey, well, lovely to have you on the show, Dr. Das. And now let's look at floaty summer fashions. I mean, you can't do this.
Yeah, and if people really need help and really need to hear that message, it's like only having 10 minutes for a GP appointment. I'm not digging at doctors; it's not their fault at all. But it's a similar sort of thing, isn't it?
You know what? This literally happened to me yesterday. So I was on This Morning yesterday. I was talking about this quite sort of complex case. It's a man called Russell Causley, who's going to be the very first person to ever have a public parole hearing. And so
I know that name. Why do I know that name?
He's been in the news recently. So he killed his wife back in the 80s, never revealed where the body was, evaded the police for 10 years, eventually got caught, was in prison for 23 years, I believe.
So a documentary about him, there must be.
Probably, but not one that I've seen.
Probably stars David Tennant.
And so anyway, it's this complicated case. His daughter, who's also the victim's daughter as well, was on, and so it was me and her talking, and exactly what you said, Russ, happened. So we didn't have enough time. I was asked a couple of questions, not really the questions that I prepped for.
Of course I was going to be asked. Of course not, because don't forget they've got earpieces, they've got a prep script. And they're thinking about the next... I hate to say this. They're not focusing. And I'm not being rude about Phil or Holly or any of those people. They're already thinking about the next thing. They've got to get through this, and they're worrying about timing, which is why when Howard and I co-founded Men's Radio Station, I wanted long form conversations, and I didn't want interviews. I wanted a conversation.
Yeah.
So we never prep because I don't know where the conversation's going to go.
So tell us more, Doctor.
Yeah. What do you want to know about, Howard?
What do we want to know? We want to know. This is Neil. What we want to know. Well, I want to know. Well, we've established why you want to do this, but sort of tell us more about what you do, because it's a very, very interesting area.
Okay. In terms of the profession or in terms of the media?
No, media, forget that. You either will or you won't. I think you probably will.
Yeah, so let me take you through a typical case. So I spend 2 days a week working for the NHS, and I work in court. So I was there this morning. And if a defendant comes in and they think that they have mental illness, so either they're acting bizarrely on the day or they have a psychiatric diagnosis, say schizophrenia, then I will assess them to see whether there's a few different things. So whether they're fit to plead, so whether they're actually mentally sound enough at that time to actually go through the court case. And if they are, whether there's potential psychiatric defense. So for example, I have recently I've done a couple of murder cases where there's been somebody who's clearly really unwell. So, hearing voices, delusions, and they might have a psychiatric defense. And conversely, I've seen some people who, to be honest, might have a bit of background anxiety or depression, but in my view, are completely responsible for their actions. So I have to kind of make that judgment call, write it up in an expert report, put it into the court, sometimes have to go into court and give evidence if it's contested by the other side.
Right.
How much? There's a huge responsibility, isn't it? I mean, it's a massive responsibility because somebody's life, so to speak, and certainly their immediate future is pretty much in your hands.
Yeah, that is true, but I don't really feel that at the time, and I'll explain why. Because one of these cases, especially if I'm giving a psychiatric defense, is a huge piece of work. So I will be spending probably on average 8 to 10 hours just looking through the evidence, probably assess the person for about an hour, probably write up my report 5 or 6 hours. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's not that I make a snapshot judgment there and then. It's not like a quick decision. It's something that I do, and I show my working. It's like GCSE maths. So any good expert will say, these are the reasons for my argument. So these are the reasons that he might have mental illness, and these are the reasons against. And this is a reasonable range of opinions. And this is where I think my opinion stands. Like, should he have a psychiatric defense, not guilty by reason of insanity? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is a responsibility, but I don't feel that pressure because I'm very objective, I'd like to think, and I'm very open about all the possible kind of angles. I have worked with some experts who are not like that, in my opinion. So they're quite pig-headed and they're very opinionated, but I try and be as open as I can be. And I tell the court if I don't know something, I make that very clear. So the judge gets to make a decision. My recommendations are not set in stone, and they don't directly affect the outcome myself. It's just the judge chooses whether or not to listen to me.
Let's have a look at this. This is an interesting pickup from what you were saying. Sorry to disappear. We have to read it out because we're being listened to by about 70,000 people on another radio station, so they can't see us. Even worse than the Holly and Phil type shows. For me, the worst, the portrayal of psychiatrists and social workers in shows like EastEnders and Coronation Street. Always a negative image and far from the truth. Well, they write it in shorthand, don't they?
That's actually spawned a really good question in my mind. Sure. What would you like people to know about what you do, which they don't know about what you do? They think they know what you do because they've seen it on telly or read it in the Sun or seen, bad portrayals like our lady just said. What would you like people to know? What truth would you like people to know about what you do that they don't already know now?
Okay, I'm just furiously scribbling notes. I don't want to forget what I want to say. So there's 3 areas that I think stand out to me. Firstly, I think there's a general misconception that everybody, that it's as simple as somebody with a mental illness is not criminally culpable. So I'll give you a good example. I've been looking into the case of Dharma recently, just because it's trending right now. I've made a video about him on my YouTube channel, and he was given a number of diagnoses during his trial. So there seems to be like a voice from the public saying because he shouldn't be thought of as being mentally ill because he should take responsibility for his actions. And I guess, so the first thing I would say is that having a mental illness and being criminally culpable are they overlap, but they're two distinct things, which is exactly why you need an expert witness like myself. So I guess another way of saying that is not everybody with a mental illness is dangerous. And also not anybody with a mental illness who commits a crime is necessarily not responsible for their actions. So that'd be one thing. The other thing would be that in the places that I work, so medium secure units, for example, I've worked at Broadmoor in the past, I think there's an assumption that people who go there are there for the rest of their lives and they are permanently dangerous and they can never be released, which is not true. Absolutely not true. There's an entire system for rehabilitating people with mental illnesses to make them safe. So, the whole point of them being there rather than prison is to eventually release them into society. And finally, my third point would be, and it's an uncomfortable point, but it's something that I've seen over and over again, is that almost all perpetrators of violent offences were victims once themselves in some form of another. So the vast majority, 95 to 99% of my patients have suffered physical or sexual abuse. They've come from poverty. They've come from neglectful
What was
parents.
that percentage again?
From the people that I see, 90 to 95% have something.
90 to 95%.
That's a beautiful answer, Doctor.
Wow.
And I would then ask, what improvements, if you could wave a magic wand, what improvements would you like to see? Because particularly that third point, I've debated that one with myself deeply. Someone's had an awful past. It's understandable why they are as they are. But then again, they can't be allowed to go around hurting innocent people.
Yeah, precisely.
Who have got nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Who perhaps haven't had an awful past. That isn't fair to either side, really. So, and sometimes I think, or maybe this is just my perception of it, which I've been fed, and so please correct me, perfect forum to do it. My perception is sometimes people are just kind of thrown in prison when they shouldn't be.
Yeah. So I think if I had a magic wand and if my resources were limitless, then I would spend that money on social issues. So everything from housing to poverty, everything that puts some people, quite a big proportion of our society, into depravity. But that's easy for me to say, and it's much, much harder to do. It takes a lot of funding. More realistically than that, I would say putting money into, or putting resources into, psychiatric services. So something that I've seen in my career as a forensic psychiatrist is the threshold for people to get treatment is gradually kind of increasing every year. So when I first started as a psychiatrist,
gradually
increasing. So
right.
you have to be more mentally ill to actually get help in the first place, to be like even assessed. People who need to be sectioned, for example, it's really hard to get them seen. So it used to be when I first started that if somebody was quite unwell, say schizophrenia, hearing voices, they would get assessed relatively quickly. They'd be treated ideally in the community, if not in hospital. Whereas now there's such a pressure on beds and on resources that mentally ill people are not being assessed or treated. It's the very ill, very dangerous people who actually.
Why are we seeing that though? Why is mental illness so rampant at the moment? What's changed?
So I think two things have changed. So I think one thing is that the actual incidence of mental illness has gradually increased. And I think that's related to all the social issues that I was talking about, increased poverty over time. And I think the resources has per capita, it's decreased because of the extra need. But also there was a push a couple of decades ago of closing inpatient units and treating people in the community. Now, in theory, that's a really good idea for people that can be stable in the community. But from my experience, from what I've seen, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people who need inpatient treatment, who, need to be treated against their will, and they fall through the gaps. Yeah.
One thing I just want to pick up on, particularly because we were talking about depression and how it lies, the voice of depression is always a liar. The conflation, if that's the right word, of mental illness and being a danger to people, because I've certainly had dips in my mental health. That's partly how I got the job on here, because I blogged about it and Russ saw it. But I would never consider myself, and I certainly wasn't dangerous to anyone, apart possibly from myself, because my self-care was at an all-time low. But I think some people would fear that, oh my goodness, mental illness, they could be dangerous. And I just want to reassure people that the vast majority of people aren't, if that's true.
Yeah, absolutely. So the vast majority of people with a serious mental illness do not commit violence and are much more likely to be the victim of violence. But I think my perspective is a bit skewed because the people that come under my radar are people that are already into the criminal justice system. But yeah, completely agree with you.
Yeah. I just wanted to flag that because the voice of depression can speak very loudly.
A couple of very interesting points. This is coming in from Fife up in Scotland. Sue Sleet. The social care system does not appropriately insure young people for the world. Limited mental health care support. This leads to a feeding of the youth justice system and mental health services. And look, and you're like this one, Ramsey White Asylum, who's quite a mover and shaker, may I tell you. Dr. Dust seems a great guest. Well, no argument from me on that point, Ramsey. You should get him on regularly. Well, if he's available, he has a regular spot. So many interesting topics he covered. I wonder if he has a view on those detective-type dramas where a head doctor is brought in to profile or help identify the perpetrator.
And I love the way you went into America there.
Well, obviously. That's it.
Yeah.
Doc, what do you think?
I was going to do the accent then, but I think I'm going to fail.
No. Here's my 101 on media. Don't do that because it'll lower your brand. I can do it because no one gives a shit. Not you. You're a professional.
I don't have a brand yet, so it's all good.
Yes, you. No.
I want to ask you about that.
I know you're the one who's giving the advice because you're very, very clever, and we're not. We're a couple of buffoons, and we enjoy reveling in it. But you do have a brand. I'm being absolutely serious. I was to advise you, if I was your PR people, you do have a brand. You're a doctor. You have a very specific area of expertise. Never, ever undermine that.
And also,
seriously, I'm serious.
By doing an American accent, you mean?
Well, no, because then you become people like us.
I've been in media long enough to spot something good when I see it. You're very, very. You wouldn't have any problem with the presenting side of media. You're very articulate. You're very personable.
But you see, when somebody like
very kind of you, thank you.
When I tell you why I say this, I tell you what. I'm sorry, it's me giving you advice, but I've been in this game a very long time, and you're kind of starting. If you want to go down that route, God knows why, but you do. Okay, fair enough. That's your decision. When you get somebody like Richard Madeley, who in the day was like, and then he tries to be like a comedian. It dilutes. You get ridiculed. You know.
Yeah.
You're not Ricky Gervais. You're not Michael McIntyre. All these. You're not. I don't mean you. I mean, if you're a presenter, it's just embarrassing. Do what you do and stick within those guidelines and do it the best that you can.
If the ideal media path could open up, given your desires, what would it be?
I think what I would like to be is the go-to person to discuss interesting cases when they come up. So, we talked about that guy, Russell Causley. That's exactly my kind of area of expertise. I've got so much to say about it, but I just need a platform where I've got more than 2 minutes to talk about it, where I can just talk about it.
Doc, you must know, and if your PR people haven't, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm lecturing you. We're going to get you back, or phone me, we'll have a conversation about it. But sure. You must know that the media is incredibly lazy. They're incredibly lazy. Something comes up, the news breaks. Let's say there's been I'm going to give a horrible example. There's been a horrible murder, right? And there's aspects that need to be apparently discussed and putting on your Daily Mail hat, the populist view. They'll say to an intern or they'll say to the researcher, get me somebody. You'll be on speed dial. That's what happens. This is how it works. And people say, why do we keep seeing the same people? Because they're on speed dial. They've got to get them in the studio. They know they're reliable. They can whip them in and they can disappear. That's what you aim towards.
I know this wasn't intended to be a life coaching session.
We'll get you back to talk about forensic psychiatry.
Have you thought about starting something exactly like this, except for what you do rather than what Russ and I do?
So I kind of already have. I've got a YouTube channel.
Well, you mentioned that. Yeah, where can people find that? What do they need to search for?
Probably on YouTube, Neil. I'm going out on a limb here.
Typing what into YouTube?
Oh, okay. Well, if you're going to be... Well, this is a common name, Dr. Soham Das. That's going to be tricky to find.
It's my channel is called, you'll like this, A Psych for Sore Minds.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
A Psych for Sore Minds with an M.
See, that's why I asked.
And I try and do that, yeah.
I like that.
I didn't think you'd like it that much.
Not even I, who is the worst, would have come up with that. I got a very interesting question coming in. I've got 2 minutes, and this is a new listener, so I want to get this in a new viewer as well. Dave, my eyesight, Dave Dano. Does Dr. Das ever meet another doctor who disagrees with his findings in court? Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wouldn't say it happens very often, but I'd say maybe 5 to 10% of my cases, another expert will be drafted in to have an opposing question, which brings up a really interesting topic to me. I know we don't have much time, which is the concept of a cowboy expert. So expert witnesses should be completely neutral and objective, regardless of who pays for who's paying them, who instructs them. But in reality, you find these experts that come in because they want to get more business. So they lean towards the defense, or they lean towards the prosecution. I don't think they lie or fabricate evidence, but you can certainly, I've seen it happen. You can twist evidence to lean a certain way. So yeah, so I do come across these experts over and over again, who
possibly, or maybe conscious,
or maybe slightly conscious.
Well,
I would say.
Well, judging from the fact that the figures have spiked, and
we've got to get you back.
We'd love to have you back. So I will get hold of. I think I've got your email. Oh look, even Eve Phantom says, "Great guest and great show." You've got to do like that with a name like that.
Russ, I need 10 seconds before we go.
Go
on. Very quickly, we were talking about depression earlier. I must recommend this. I'd like to get this guy on the show.
Get him on the show.
How to Tell Depression to Piss Off.
I love the title straight away. Doc, will you come back?
Absolutely, I'd love to come back. Yeah.
All right,
please do.
We've got to go. I'll be back. We've got to go. I'll be back.
We can help with anything, any media stuff. Just give me a shout.
Get hold of me. Get hold of me. It's fine.
Cool. I'm gonna take you up on that. Thank you.
No, do it.
Pleasure. Please do.
Yep. All right. We'll be back on Friday, 12 o'clock. Until then,
see you Monday.
Bye, gang. Bye.
Pleasure. Thank you.